Hello again. Whenever I've been staying in somebody else's country, I've always taken great care not to criticise their country or say unpleasant things about their leaders. This is the height of ill manners. Those enjoying Britain's hospitality sometimes do not feel constrained by similar feelings of courtesy and sensitivity. 3 days after the death of the Queen, a Sudanese woman called Nesrine Malik, who writes for the Guardian newspaper, thought it would be a good idea to start saying some rather offensive things about this country in general and the Queen in particular. She may be seen in the thumbnail to this video. I have two objections to this. In the first place, this person was born in Sudan and grew up in Sudan, Kenya, Egypt and Saudi Arabia. This means that her knowledge of Britain and its history is likely to be very limited. The second objection I have is that her article is almost incomprehensible due to her desire to use grand words, the meaning of which she evidently does not know. I give a link to the piece in the description to this video so that viewers can read it for themselves. Let me first give one or two examples of the way that using fancy language might sound very impressive on the surface but can actually end up being quite meaningless. Referring to the Queen's ceremonial role, Malik writes, "But the truth is that what others saw was a display of confidence, coherence and continuity when the country she ruled over had little of these. What on earth is meant by this country having little coherence? The antonym of coherent is incoherent, so I suppose she is saying in a roundabout way that Britain is incoherent. But what does that actually mean? I literally have no idea at all what an incoherent country might be." Of Britain's loss of status as a world power, she writes, "The more that status frayed, the more the Queen protected the country's id." Now, I know well enough what the id is in terms of Freudian psychoanalysis, but I have not the remotest idea what Britain's id might be, and still less do I understand how this id was protected by the monarch. It's all very confusing. Of course, Malik is an intellectual, so this might partly account for my incomprehension. No doubt she's a little bit brighter than I am. Where I am compelled to pull her up, though, is when she claims that Britain has never been a nation. Before I quote the relevant paragraph, bear in mind that it was written by a young foreigner who grew up in Sudan, Kenya, Egypt and Saudi Arabia and did not even come to this country until she was an adult. Ready? "But the more change in the country's culture, class structure and economic profile demanded these confrontations with reality, the more the Queen became a refuge, a representation of a fictional time when things were simpler, when it was Shakespeare, Enid Blyton, the spirit of the Blitz, standing alone against fascism, beneficent toffs, cheeky working class, the welfare state, the swinging 60s, the friendly black and brown faces cleaning the floors and manning the wards. As long as the Queen existed, so did that country. The reality is, though, along with the noble empire, that country never really did exist." I wonder how she would know that that country never existed. Perhaps she's been reading books about it or magazine articles. The cheek of this woman is simply breathtaking. Imagine my going to live in Sudan and writing in their newspapers to tell them that the country they remembered in the 1950s and 1960s never existed. Apart from being very rude, I would be making a complete fool of myself. Of course, she has many other harsh things to say about Britain, and it would perhaps be unkind of me to reflect that she was born in a country where, until 3 years ago, the method of capital punishment was crucifixion. Women were stoned to death, and sometimes people were flogged to death judicially as well. One cannot help but feel that if she wishes to write about the history of a ghastly country, she might perhaps be better employed writing about the recent history of her own homeland.